Welcome to the second class of A to Z data science. In today's class, we are going to look into some of the arithmetic operations. This is very basic, and if you are already a Python developer, this is something you can skip. But this is important for all those out there who are trying to learn data science and coding at the same time. Since I'm going to use Python for all my classes, this is something that I need to teach you before we can go forward. So arithmetic operations are basically addition, subtraction, multiplication, and this kind of operations. So it's very straightforward on how you run it. You just take two numbers like 2 and 3 and we try to add it. You see that 2 plus 3 we get a 5. Sometimes we have this doubt like does space place any value? In this case you can actually see that I have removed the space here and I'm trying to run, and you see that there is no changes. And even if there is a space between one number and there is no space between the other number, still there is no change. But here is something different than the previous example. Here you have a bracket in between. So when you run this kind of code, you get syntax error. Syntax error is a very important error in Python, where it says that you have missed something or you have not given me instruction in the way that I can understand. Python understands instruction in a particular way and we need to let it know in the similar way. But here we just have a bracket in middle of these two numbers which doesn't make sense to the Python. So it says here in line 1 there's a problem, and it says that it's a syntax error and it's an invalid syntax. So in case if you take a bracket and if you put it on both the number, still we have no issues, we are getting 4. What in the case we put bracket for only one number, still we get 4. Now look at this example. We are trying to add number 2 with a string A. Do you think this is going to work? This is where we get something called as name error, where it says name A is not defined. As we progress, we will discuss on how we are going to define values to a string and how we are going to use that one. If you want to learn more on what is a name error, here is a Python document that you can go through. Subtractions just work similar to addition. So instead of a plus symbol, we use a minus symbol, and when we run, we get the value. Try all this case scenario where you had space, where you removed space, where you used bracket, all this example, and you can see that the subtraction works in the similar way how the addition works. For multiplication, we just use a star symbol, and when we run, we get the same value. For division, we just use a slash. There's something that you need to know about floor division. Floor division, let me explain it with an example. So here you see 15 divided by 4, you get 3.75, right? But when you use double slash, that is when we are asking it to do a floor division. And when we run that, you see that instead of 3.75, we are getting one number has 3. The reason is it is rounding off. Irrespective of whether it's more than 0.5 or less than 0.5, it's just rounding off to 3, where it's trying to remove the decimal. But if you use a minus symbol, it's a little bit different. Like say when you multiply minus 15 by 4, you see minus 3.75. But when you try to floor it, instead of getting minus 3, you get minus 4. For positive number and negative number, floor division works differently. If you want, you can research and find out more. Doesn't matter if negative is minus 15 or is it minus 4. When you divide, you get the same answer, and when you floor, you get the same answer. Modulus is like finding a reminder. If you see like 4 6 are 24. So when you minus 25 by 24, 1 is what is left. So that is how modulus works. So you'd be thinking like, what is the use of this modulus? Say if you give a condition like n modulus 2 is equal to 0, it shows that it's an even number. So any number that is can divided that can be divided by 2 and the output is 0, like there's no value, like there's no remainder that comes out, then we know that it's a even number. So use case of this kind of modulus is to find whether a particular number is a odd number or a even number. We know 25 is a odd number, so let's see when we give 25 modulus 2. You see you get 1, so there is a number remainder of 1 is coming out of this equation, so that means this is an odd number. Similarly 20 is an even number, so you should get a 0, and we got a 0, and 89 is an odd number, so we should get an 1. So this is how you write small logic to identify whether a particular number is odd or even. There are many other use cases that can be used for this. For now, I just want to keep it simple to give an example on where we use it. Exponent is more like a square, like you're trying to see what is the 5 square of 2. That basically is 5 into 5, that is 25. So you use a single star for multiplication and use a double star to find the exponent, that is to find the square root. You can also find the cube root by just giving it as 3, and when you run you see you get 125. Parenthesis is something you should be very careful when you're using, because depending on where you use it the answer will change. Like in this case I'm using for 2 plus 5, and when I run I'm getting an answer of 56. And see this example, instead of 2 plus 5 I'm using it around 5 and 8, where I'm trying to do a multiplication, and the answer is 42. You can use, like I just created one big equation where I used the plus sign, the minus sign, the multiplication, the division, and also I'm trying to square root it. And you can see that the way I'm using, so I'm wrapping up it here and I'm wrapping up it here. This is where I have wrapped this, and here. Let me just run this and I get a value. Just say if I forgot to have one of the bracket, then as I told you, it says that there's a syntax error. So just adding that bracket will solve this issue. Now let me talk about some libraries that you can actually import. In Jupyter, most of this library are already installed. If it's not installed, you need to install them. If you ever come across certain library, I'm going to show you on how to install this. But right now, most of these libraries are already installed. So what we do is we just use import command and we say import the math library. So math library is just a library which has a lot of scientific calculation that can be done very easily. So I just import the math library and I run it, and I want to find the square root of this. So I use square root and run this. You see there's a name error. It says that name square root is not defined. This is what I was trying to tell you in the previous example, that name error are very important. So how do I define square root over here? So what we can do is, from math, which we already imported, we can import specifically square root. You might be thinking like, what else can I import? So if you just use the tab button here, you can actually see all the mathematical scientific calculator things that are available for you. You can find factorial, you can find gamma, and lot of other things. But here we are more interested to find the square root. So I'm going to use the square root and say, hey, from math, import square root for me. And now that when I import the square root, it's defined. There's a particular function that it has to do. So when I run this, nothing happens. You don't find any results. The reason is it's importing. So now that I had an error over here, let me see if the same error comes over here. Now you see that we actually saw that it actually worked perfectly fine without any issue. So this is how we use arithmetic operations. So this is very top level. If you want, you can uh, research more on this and learn more on this, and you can try different combinations so that you understand on how these things work. Don't worry too much about importing the libraries and using them, because we'll be doing a lot of them for our data science project, and it will be a second nature to you. With this, I'm finishing this video. I'll meet you in the next video. Thank you.